We are building out a network. In fact, we've completed the first element of our network. We will have 72 plane coverage, which basically gets us plus or minus 50 degrees, 53, 55 degrees, and then we'll get to the poles later this year. We were hoping to do so a little bit sooner, but we're working on our laser comm terminals. So we've basically deployed a network. For those of you that haven't yet tried it, we've rolled out Better Than Nothing beta service. Which, frankly, I live in a ranch in central Texas, and it is much better, way better than nothing. It was certainly way better than my DSL service, which was $140 a month and didn't work when it was cold or rainy out. I do believe that there is insatiable demand for data. There are billions of people that do not have access to decent internet, and so that's a pretty big market. And so I am not worried about the number of organizations that are interested in doing this. I'm interested and concerned about their sustainability. We were able to tackle almost all the elements of the cost before we rolled out service, with the exception of the user terminal. I can say, not proudly, that with every customer we acquire, we lose money on the user terminal because the cost of that user terminal is higher than the average consumer can afford. However, what's critical for us now is the speed of spin on those designs. And in fact, the ones that we will have later this year will cost roughly half of what our current user terminals cost. And then we think we'll be able to cut that in half yet again. Yeah. So what's key for us was, now, how do we mitigate the cost of the user terminal? We made it so easy to set up that you don't have to hire an installer if you don't need to put it in a particularly unique place. And the other piece is the Wi-Fi modem comes for the same price as the rest of the hardware, so there's not an additional cost on a monthly basis to rent the modem. So we worked on all the elements. Reusability was key, actually, to deploying this constellation. And our satellite technology, we were able to bring that to a reasonable place with this generation of constellation. So really the only place, and I don't want to say we failed because we've made tremendous progress on the user terminal, but those are still expensive. But again, I think they'll be about a quarter of the cost to us right now in maybe a year. I mean, it's still expensive. Anything you add to that satellite is expensive. But when you pack, 60 of them together and you throw them on one reusable launch vehicle, the economics are pretty favorable for us. First of all, I actually want to defend my national security space customers. They have embraced reusability. They're flying on flight-proven Falcon 9 rockets, whereas 7 years ago they wouldn't come near us, even visit the facility, which is 5 miles away from their headquarters. So I do see the Department of Defense embracing commercial more. I've seen it faster in the intelligence community, in fact, and there's not a lot of details that I can go there. Yeah. But what we've seen is they tend to be less prescriptive on the hows and just tell us what the organization needs from a requirements perspective, but don't tell us how to go do that. And that leads me to what I think the government needs to do is embrace innovation. And innovation is scary for the Department of Defense because that means tried and true is going to change, right? And change is scary, especially when you're trying to, conduct operations overseas. You want to make sure that the stuff works. However, and embracing innovation is, from my perspective, it's two things. It is allow your partners to do what they do best, to provide a capability the way they can provide it, so no prescriptive requirements. And second is help the rest of the federal government figure out how to regulate at the speed of innovation. Right? I don't think that the bureaucracy in the United States has ill intent to squash innovation. That is not their intent. However, the bureaucracy associated with launching a rocket, with modifying an FCC license to make it actually safer for the community, lower orbits, make them deorbit faster. You want to increase the speed at which they can do those kinds of good for the community things. Yeah, so I don't want to dismiss the risk here by any stretch. However, The FCC has the most rigorous space safety rules of any other country on the planet. We are licensed by the FCC here in the U.S. Our spectrum is licensed by the FCC. So the FCC mandates the most rigorous rules with respect to space safety. And then, in addition to that, you can go above and beyond, and SpaceX has done that with Starlink. The worst day in the world for Starlink is to have a collision. We hurt ourselves. So we have absolutely no desire to create chaos in our orbits. And so what are we doing? We do have an autonomous safety system. Our Starlink satellites guide themselves in the right position, so the risk becomes more between us and kind of the debris. That is the highest probability of collision for Starlink. And then the next is collisions with other satellites on orbit. There is a huge amount of focus on this within the Space Force to make sure we have great tracking, real-time updates, and I think we will continue to move towards a better system to regulate that. But really what's critically important is that you don't have assets in orbits that are useful that are not going to decay fast enough. There's kind of an international agreement that you want decay within 25 years. With our modification that was recently approved through the FCC, the natural decay, if we were to have a satellite that was not functional, is less than 5 years. And so we think altitude is everything, and by that I mean lower altitude. The atmosphere, the thickness of the atmosphere cleans up these orbits, and so we are quite concerned about the number of operators that are in much higher orbits. We were originally licensed at much higher orbits, and based on the way we innovate and we spin our designs, we thought it was the right thing to do to bring them lower. And we'd certainly like to see more of that occurring. Responsible operators will end up doing the right thing. In fact, Neil and our team, OneWeb and SpaceX team, when it comes to the collision avoidance piece, works together brilliantly. We need to get rid of the junk that's in orbit right now that is non-maneuverable, non-functional, and causes risk. We have two big issues right now. One are the chips, which I think everybody understands the issues. In fact, that's what's delayed some of the new user terminals that we're spending the design on. And the other thing is liquid oxygen. We're actually going to be impacted this year with the lack of liquid oxygen for launch. We certainly are going to make sure hospitals have the liquid oxygen that we need. But for anybody that has liquid oxygen to spare, would you send me an email, Gwen@SpaceX.com? Well, first of all, I think Leo will succeed. Which one of us, or all of us, or none of us? I'm not guessing on any of that, right? So Leo will succeed. I have found, and I think this is kind of broadly applicable, that when responsible operators and businesses work together, coordinate, and don't weaponize bureaucracy, don't weaponize licensing, then we can figure out how to make this work.